In this slide presentation, I will be going over the basics of ICD-10 CM coding along with some examples. I find it is best to look at specific examples when you're first learning this concept. The first thing you need to identify is the main term in the diagnosis. This is the condition, disease, signs, or symptoms the patient was seen for. I look at it as what is wrong, not where is it. For example, a patient is seen for right knee pain. You wouldn't look under the word knee, it would direct you to see condition. This is not the word condition, but the condition of the knee. What is wrong with it? In this situation, it is pain. Another example is myocardial infarction. The main term would be infarction, which is the obstruction of blood flow to an organ or region of tissue. Myocardial is where it occurred, the muscular tissue of the heart. You can see where knowing medical terminology would be very helpful in coding. Once you have located the main term, find that term in the index. Main terms are listed in bold. Then you would review the subterms underneath for more specific examples of the diagnosis. Let's review our specific examples. For right knee pain, we determined the pain was the main term, so we would find that in the index. Then we would look for the subterm knee to find the more specific location of pain. Do you see knee listed under as a subterm? Knee is not listed as a subterm under pain. Sometimes you have to think of other medical terms that the word may be classified under. In this situation, if you glance up a little, you see the term knee listed under joint as a subterm. In the other example, we identified infarction as the main term. Myocardial would be the subterm. Can you locate infarction as the main term? Sometimes it is with another form of the same medical term, like infarct in this situation. Now locate myocardial as a subterm. This is also listed with another form of the same medical term, myocardium. In the examples we looked at, we found subterms to specify the diagnosis we were looking for. Sometimes there is no specific term to match your diagnosis. In this situation, you would use the default code or the unspecified code. This is the code listed next to the main term. Words in parentheses after the main term are called non-essential modifiers. They are examples of the diagnosis that are classified under the unspecified code. These terms are not required to use that code, just as examples. Let's look at one example of this. For the diagnosis chronic sinusitis, the main term is sinusitis. Locate this term in the index. Is there a subterm for chronic listed under sinusitis? There is not, but this word is listed in parentheses next to the main term. The default code or the unspecified code for sinusitis would be J32.9. Once you have located your code in the index, look for a symbol next to the code to indicate if additional characters are required. This means the code is invalid without more characters. To find these, look up the code in the tabular section. Let's look at the example of second-degree burn on the right hand. The main term is burn. Locate this main term in the index. The subterm would be hand, then right, then second degree to get the specific diagnosis. Next to this code T23.201, you see a check mark. Look at the key on the bottom of the page to see that this check mark means additional characters are required. This means the code is not valid without additional characters. These are found in the tabular section. Once you find your code in the index, all codes should be verified in the tabular section. This is done to verify you found the correct subterms, to locate the additional characters, and to read the instructional notations associated with that code. The codes are located alpha and numeric in the tabular section. Once you locate it, read all the official notations carefully. These are the ones covered in the earlier notes in this week's module and in this week's chapter. Let's go back to our first example, right knee pain. In the index, this directed you to the code M25.56, and there was a check mark at the end of the code. In the tabular section, M25.56 also has a check mark next to it indicating additional characters are required. In this situation, the more specific codes with additional characters are located underneath code M25.56. Right knee pain would be coded as M25.561. Watch the official notations. Following words are some examples. Includes, excludes, code also. You need to follow those instructions to code accurately. Excludes lets you know if you've missed an important subterm when locating the term in the end of it. Look under sleep apnea in the tabular section. Diagnosis code G47.30. There's official notations listed here. An example of sleep apnea excludes sleep apnea of newborn, and it directs you to the correct code to code for that type of sleep apnea. Code also is listed under sleep apnea to indicate you should also code any underlying condition if it was documented. For example, if a patient has sleep apnea and COPD, both would be coded since COPD is an underlying condition. Let's also look at the code for diabetes under E11 in the tabular section. The official notations listed under code E11 list the following: includes. If you have no other documentation regarding the type of diabetes, you would use category E11 because it includes diabetes not otherwise specified, or NOS. It also lists a notation, use additional code. In ICD-10, diabetes codes are not listed based on whether the patient is on insulin or not. However, it instructs us here to add an additional code, Z79.4, if the patient uses insulin. It also has a notation, excludes. The list of excludes 1 directs you to other specific types of diabetes, such as gestational diabetes or post-procedural diabetes. The code also has a check mark to the left indicating additional characters are required. This code gives you a lot of examples of things to watch for in the tabular section. Then there's the placeholder X. If there is less than 6 characters in the code and a 7th character is required, you need to add X as its placeholder. The 7th character always has to be in the 7th position. For example, let's look at code S44.0 in the tabular section. S44.0 has a check mark indicating it requires the 5th character. The codes with the 5th character are tabbed underneath, but these codes also have a check mark requiring a 7th character. There is no 6th character listed. In order to use one of the 7th characters listed in the pink box above code S44.0, you'll need to add a placeholder X. For example, patient is seen for initial encounter for injury of the ulnar nerve of the left upper arm. The correct diagnosis code would be S44.02XA.